For Creamer Media's Policy, I'm Sashni Medley. Joining me today is photographer Bonile discussing his exhibition, Mandela's Roots Revisited. Tell us about yourself, where you grew up and how you grew up, and about your interest in photography.
I was born in Port Elizabeth, and then at the age of 8 I moved to East London. That was in 1982, and then later I moved to Johannesburg to study photography. Yes, it was during 1997 that I was staying with my sister in Soweto, Pimville, and I wanted to find a school that could teach photography. But during that period, I did not know where to find the school because I did not have money. My sister was staying like in a shack there in Pimville. Now she used to give me 5 francs, and I used that 5 francs to buy the Sowetan. Every time when I buy the Sowetan, I could not find any institution that was offering a photography course. Then I decided to phone a toll-free line, 1023. When I called, a lady with a sweet voice answered, and I told her that, hey man, I'm looking for a photography school. She checked on the computer and then she found the Market Theatre. She said, you must go to the Market Theatre and you'll find the school there. Then I collected those coins that I was given by my sister. I walked to the taxi station, and when I arrived at Beer Street, I found the hawkers and then I asked them, where's the Market Theatre? They told me that, you know what, just go straight. When I arrived at the Market Theatre, I was told that no, you must go to the photography workshop. And then there I found a lady by the name of Jenny Gordon, explained my situation and my hunger for studying photography, and I was offered a bursary on the spot.
Your work's range is impressive as you cover topics such as male initiation, rural communities, performance arts, and crime scenes. How do you narrow down what topics should be covered?
Well, before I get there, whilst studying at Market Photograph Workshop, I developed an interest in the arts. Remember that Newtown is a cultural place. You meet artists, dancers, musicians, and different performers. So I used to see these artists coming in and out. So I started by photographing at Market Theatre, and then later I did an internship at Sowetan newspaper. So that's when I started to get into the news, and then later I freelanced for other newspapers. It was during that period that I got interested to cover different art performances. But because I'm not from Joburg, so I would visit home, Port Elizabeth. And then there I wanted to tell my own story. So I then spent time in my village in Alice to tell a story about my community. And then the rest developed as I grew as a photographer.
You say that Nelson Mandela directly influenced your photography. How did he do that?
In 2003, I was working for a weekend newspaper, and I later received a call from someone from the Mandela Foundation saying that they would like me to cover an event where Mandela was meeting his guests. I agreed, and I arrived at Mandela Foundation. I was told that, Madiba will be meeting these people and we want you to be the photographer. And I had arrived there early, so Madiba came, I walked slowly, sat on the chair. I was not allowed to use flashlight, so I used lights. And he spoke about his life story, about his struggle, being without a father figure, and where he used to play as a boy, and where he used to look after livestock. I was inspired by his struggle. So after he spoke, confidently about his struggle, I had to think about this, but I didn't know what to do with that story. 3 months later, I got a scholarship to study in New York. I left. So when I finished my studies in New York and ready to come back to South Africa, I wanted to work on a project, on a meaningful project, but I didn't know what to work on. Then I decided that, Madiba's story is so powerful in such a way that it's difficult to escape my mind. Hence, I decided to go to Eastern Cape and trace Madiba's roots in Qunu, Mvezo and Mqhekezweni.
Tell us about your exhibition, Mandela's Roots Revisited. The pictures are not of Madiba himself.
It is difficult to find a story or tell a story of Madiba's childhood. Most people know Madiba as a man who came out of prison as this like a gigantic figure who became the president and then later retired from politics. So I wanted to tell a story of Madiba's childhood, but again I didn't know how. So I decided to trace his birthplace, but I wouldn't do that without getting the stories from the people who grew up with him or who know him better. So I traveled to Qunu. I met members of the Mandela clan and also the elders in the Mandela family, and explained my interest in telling Madiba's story. Then they pointed in the direction of Mvezo. That is where I started to do my project, by going to his birthplace.
Tell us about the approach you took with these specific pictures.
When I arrived in Mvezo, one of the elders said to me, "This is where Madiba's umbilical cord was buried." That shook me, and I started to develop interest. But the question is, how do you tell a story of a powerful figure without him being there? So at that time I didn't carry a camera because I wanted to build a relationship and also build trust with the family, and also to understand where Madiba came from. So these elders, they showed me all the places where he used to play, where he used to look after livestock and everything. So I decided to use a black and white film to tell the story, because color will be destructive. And they showed me all these places, so I had to travel with them. I didn't take pictures. And then I made so many trips to Qunu, Mvezo and Mqhekezweni. Then I started from the site where his umbilical cord was buried, and then I moved to Qunu, to where like he used to play as a boy, and then to Mqhekezweni, where he stayed up until he went to initiation school, and then later he left and then became like this powerful politician we talk about today.
Yeah. What are you hoping people will take away from your exhibition?
I would like people to understand Madiba a little bit better. Madiba was a humanist who came from an ordinary background. So most people don't know about the places that influenced his life long before politics took over. And it is very important for me to share that story with the public, because we know Madiba as this known figure, but people don't know his background. So I wanted to share this, particularly with the generation who think that, where people like Madiba came from special places. I think Mvezo, is still the same today, and people can still access it. So I would love people to know where Madiba grew up.
Tell us about your process for this specific exhibition.
This body of work was done between 2005 and 2007. and I used a black and white film. So I had to print 27 photographs, and then I framed them. And what you see here is a body of work that took 3 years to put together. And so, as I said before, that they represent Madiba without him being there, you know. And I printed all these like the size, as you see, you know, they are just like a standard size. Yeah.
Personally, what have you taken away from the process for Mandela's Roots Revisited?
This has been an emotional journey for me, because after building a strong relationship with the foundation, I was invited by the family to go to Qunu and stay with them. So staying at Madiba's place was a bit uncomfortable because I had access that was totally different. But again, I had to be very careful. I had to operate carefully, you know, because there are ethics involved as to what you can capture and what you must leave. So I was also at times, you know, invited to have lunch with Madiba or breakfast, and he would tell stories. And those stories were meaningful. But if I can share one of the stories, he would speak confidently, you know, about where he used to play. He would say, I used to play there, pointing in the direction of the landscapes there in Qunu. So those stories were inspiring. Hence, I felt that I needed to share, because these were stories that were coming direct from Madiba. And I only read The Long Walk to Freedom after listening to Madiba's story. So this exhibition has taught me that you need sometimes to learn to listen, and at the same time understand that there are many ways of telling a story, and how you tell a story, you need to be very careful and not do work that will be hurtful to others. As I said again, that being part of you know, the family, I was given exclusive opportunities, and the body of work that is displayed here, you know, was work that really inspired me in such a way that I felt that I needed to share it with the public.
And how can our viewers, the general public, experience your exhibition?
This exhibition is being shown at all UJ campuses. And I think people, when they come here, they will learn about Madiba's roots, to know where he came from. Roots, for me, are the sustaining positions of life. And Madiba was that figure that sustained us. And I want them to know that Madiba came from an ordinary background, and therefore they must look at this work and find Madiba in the spaces and the places that he played and walked as a young boy.
That was photographer Bonile discussing his exhibition, Mandela's Roots Revisited.